Let me tell you my secret framework to having great conversations. It's a framework that I use over and over. I've had a lot of conversations on this show making this content, but in real life, my friends, my family, I've shared this framework with, and just people that I know from Discernible. They've asked, how do we have such good conversations? Well, basically the same framework that I employ over and over. I'll share it with you. It's very simple, but very powerful. Unlike some other general social training programs and tips, which only focus on surface behaviors, what I've come up with focuses much deeper on the neurology, the neurochemistry of how people interact and bond. And I use that to have great conversations. It's a framework that you can use quite literally and embody, so it becomes natural for you and intuitive, as it has for me. I find myself interviewing off camera as much as on camera. And I have a lot of so-called interviews where I'm interviewing someone and they're like, are we interviewing? But there's no, they're in my pajamas or whatever and casual clothes, and there's no cameras because I naturally employ this so much now. And I think it will help you too. So let's start simple. Here is the basic catchphrase, the framework. It is be interested and be interesting. Very simple. We're going to break it down. But if you can manage to do those two things, be interested in the person you're talking to and be interesting, then you've basically conquered the neurology of human bonding. There's one other thing to hold it together. It's the rhythm in between, knowing how to move between being interested and being interesting. So what does that mean? There's so much advice about, you think of Dale Carnegie, how to win friends and influence people, and others like active listening techniques. And the whole idea is to make other people feel important, to reflect back to them, to make them feel like they're heard and listened to and validated. But that ends up with people who take that advice way too far, and they just literally, I've come back from a social event tonight, and it's pretty apparent to me that great people, well-meaning people, but haven't learned how to have flowing conversations. They can often overplay that advice and literally just say, so what did you do today? So what do you do for work? Cool. And where do you live? And okay, and do you like pizza? Okay, and what type of pizza do you like? Oh, and where do you go for good pizza? They just pepper you with questions, and that doesn't feel natural at all. But they're simply following the advice from like how to win friends and influence people. How everyone's walking around with PMMFI on their forehead. Please make me feel important. These kinds of axioms, but they're very lacking. What they're doing though is they're trying to mimic the be interested approach. Be interested in someone. But what's actually happening when you are being interested and being interesting to someone is you are playing on a neurological driver that all humans have. We have this thing called information asymmetry, an information gradient. And this information asymmetry between person A and person B is what drives a conversation, social flow, and actually human bonding. So let me explain. Our brains are prediction machines. When you meet someone, before you've even spoken to them, the way that they present, the way that they dress, maybe you've seen them online, whatever, you have an idea of who they are, of what they might say or what they might believe, how they might react, how they might respond. And as you speak to them, your brain is making predictions. It's modeling them in your brain, and then you're observing what they actually say back to you, which then gets compared to the model in your brain. You're having prediction gaps closed in real time, and you'll notice you make prediction errors and you go, oh wow, I didn't think they would respond like that, or they would laugh at that joke, or they would take the conversation there, and you're updating your mental model of that person you're conversing with in real time. And the way you're doing that is by having an information asymmetry where you're sharing something about you, they're sharing something about them or something they've done or seen, and you have this information flow. It's an asymmetry. The problem is when people don't have an asymmetry and a flow, or they don't have a rhythm in between those, or they don't understand the whole purpose of this asymmetry and flow, and they overshare. We've all seen that. Or they undershare and they're a closed book, which also has problems. So what's actually happening when you are interested in someone and you are asking them about themselves, you are exploring them and updating your mental model of them in your head, right? So let's say, for example, you see someone, oh, what do you do for a living? You ask them, what do you do? They say, I'm an accountant. Well, this conversation's going well, isn't it? What do you do? I'm an accountant. That's a what question. That you're seeking information. But what your brain and their brain is really wired to do is to play with these mental models and close prediction gaps. What you should be doing is moving as quickly as possible to the why question. So it would be, oh, you're an accountant, cool. Why would you choose accounting? That's, some people think it's boring. It's kind of what I think. Or you might say, why did you choose an accounting job? Like AI is going to take any question to get into the why. Because when you ask why did you choose accounting, what you're doing is your brain is seeking information of how their brain thinks so that you can update your mental model of them and predict what they might do in the future. So for example, if you said, why did you choose accounting? It seems boring to most people. I think it's pretty boring. Why did you choose that? They might say, yeah, I know, but at the same time, I really like seeing people's finances. I like to see what people make and what they don't make and how they spend the money. It fascinates me. Bang, my brain is already updating on this guy's kind of got an investigative bent about him. He likes to see in behind the curtain of people. And I'm updating my... Why do you like to see people's finances? Are you surprised by what you find when you look into some people's finances? Oh yeah, like I've got these rich doctor clients and they earn 800 grand a year and they're poorer than the people I know earning 80 grand as an electrician. So you're getting a good flow on by playing with this information asymmetry. And what you're actually doing is you're playing with dopamine on a neurochemical level. When you have an information gap and you get that closed, there's a dopamine hit. That's the two neurochemicals I want to talk about is dopamine and oxytocin. So the excitement of a new relationship and discovering something new people, that's dopamine. When you start to learn about them and understand them and your mental model is getting quite accurate, understanding them more and more in a conversation or a relationship, now you're increasing something called oxytocin. You're feeling more bonded with that human as you start to understand their mental framework. You may not like them, you may not agree with them, but you're understanding them more and more, so you'll literally feel closer, at least mentally. So when they share something with you, they're being interesting to you, hopefully. You're getting oxytocin by understanding them. They're getting oxytocin, you're getting oxytocin by sharing. When there's a prediction gap and you start to close those loops, you're getting dopamine. Now, when you choose to be interested in someone, that's what I just described, that's great. When you choose to be interesting, that's a matter of when they talk to you, you need to have something to say. If they say, what do you do? And you say, oh, I'm an accountant. And they say, well, why did you choose to be an accountant? If you were to reply, I don't know, I just did. What you're doing there is you are not sharing enough. You are shutting down any sense of bonding or oxytocin movement between you, and you're keeping the information asymmetry too high. You really need to be interesting. Think about these responses when people, if you're an accountant, the most boring job in the world, frankly, in my opinion, and someone says, what do? You say, I'm an accountant, and they say, why? You better have a good answer, better than, I don't know, it's just what I chose. Really? You've just wrecked the conversation. You need to reveal something about you, about my mum made me choose it. And I kind of regret that. It's made me angry at my mum for life. Wow, that's deep. You're taking the conversation somewhere. So be interested in them by seeking the why questions and try and draw stuff out of them. And be interesting, have something interesting to say about who you are and the way you think. Let them experience some oxytocin from bonding and some dopamine from having their prediction gaps closed. Problem does come, as I said, when people overshare. So you then don't want to say, oh, this happened, then my mum did this and my dad did this and they forced me to do this and now I don't know what I'm doing and I'm depressed and then my partner does this and that and she thinks I should quit being an accountant and I don't know because then I'll have no money to pay the kids' school fees. What you're doing now is you are not having proper rhythm. So the framework is be interested, be interesting, and the rhythm between. The rhythm comes from knowing when to press in and when to hold back and when to press in again. Some really practical ways to do this are to use the three basic ways of echoing, of bridging, and of calling back, right? So let me give you an example. Echoing to someone is very powerful. you can't assume that other people know that you're listening. I have friends that will literally look at me, and as I'm talking, to reassure me, they say, I'm listening. Like, that's nice that you're reassuring me, but there are better ways to do it than say, yeah, I'm listening in the middle of the conversation. Echoing is great. So when someone says something to you, you can literally echo it back to them. When they say, I'm an accountant, you can say, wow, you're an accountant. It seems simple, but I've literally just echoed it back to them. Why did you become an accountant? I've always loved numbers. I can literally echo it back and say, you've always loved numbers, really? And then I can say, why? Are you like an Asian math whiz or what? Echoing, very powerful. A second technique would be bridging. You can literally bridge between what they've said to your question. You can literally say, you're an accountant. Oh, I have never met any accountants. I just have this stereotype in my head that accountants are really smart and good at maths. Are you? I've bridged from what they said to me, they're an accountant, into something else. In this case, a question. Or I could bridge into my own story and flip it back on being interesting. I could say, wow, you're an accountant. I've never found a good accountant. They're always so boring, but you're quite interesting. You're like a weird accountant. You can do all sorts of bridging. The most powerful thing you can do is a callback. Imagine he tells me he's an accountant, and later in the conversation we end up talking about other things, his dogs, his kids, where he's going on holiday to Hamilton Island. At some point, you're going to have the opportunity to call back to something that you may not have flagged that you were listening earlier. So let's say we're in the middle of a conversation about Hamilton Island, a holiday, and he's not sure what to do with his dogs when they're boarding, where to put his dogs when he's in Hamilton Island. You could literally do a callback and say, earlier when you said you were an accountant, you must have seen some people who do a lot of holidays, and how do they afford holidays? And doesn't matter. The point is you can make a link back to something they said earlier. Or you could say, earlier you said that you've been to America, right? And you say, yeah, I did. I was there in 1992. So when you went to America, what was it like over there? Are accountants also seen as boring over there? Making a callback is a way of validating that you, in fact, were listening, and it places an emphasis that what they gave you in the information exchange was valuable and that you took it in, you're spitting it back later on. So it's just a delayed echo or a delayed bridge. So those are some 3 techniques you can use to keep the rhythm going between being interested in them and being interesting yourself. And of course, underneath, it's all about managing that asymmetry of information and keeping the oxytocin and the, it's so late, I'm tired, the dopamine flowing between the 2 people. So that's my basic framework that I use all the time in these interviews. I'm always trying to be interested in what they're talking about, or who they are really, and how they think. And reciprocally, I'm also trying to be interesting with what I have to say and the rhythm between them. Rhythm is everything. Rhythm, rhythm, rhythm. Have a play with that, have a practice with that, and see your conversations take off in a much more natural, flowing way.